I was speaking with Josh Tollett earlier this week, and I closed out the conversation by saying, Lord willing, I'll see you Sunday. And he said, you better be, you're speaking this Sunday, right? And I said, well, unless I change my mind. And he said, no, you can't change your mind. Your name's already out on the new sign. So beware of that new sign. If you get on that, you're not coming off. The next thing that I thought about was a bunch of my clients that live in line here will be driving by that sign, looking at it and say, wait a minute, isn't that our lawyer? And people ask me sometimes how I reconcile preaching and being a lawyer, and my honest answer is I haven't reconciled it yet, but after almost 30 years. Anyway, another confession. About 3 weeks ago, I knew I'd be speaking today because Mitchell had asked if I could fill in for him. And I was sitting back, right about where Lauren's sitting right now. But anyway, I was sitting there listening to Mitchell, and my mind wandered. Now, I'm sure I'm the only person in this congregation whose mind wanders during Mitchell's sermons. And Mitchell does a good job. But my mind was chasing rabbits, as I say. And one of the things that I thought about was I wonder what I'm going to preach on, in 3 weeks. And then the next thing I thought, I've got some friends of mine who are preachers and others that I know, and one or two of them will say, well, I'm just going to preach as the Spirit leads me. I'll just, wherever my Bible falls open on the pulpit, that's what I'm going to talk about. And I've always been a little afraid of that. One reason I was always afraid it would fall open like in the genealogies there in the Old Testament, or it'd fall open in the Song of Solomon or fall open in Revelation or something. But anyway, as I was sitting there now fully tuned out to Mitchell's lesson, I picked up my Bible from the pew and I put it in my lap. And I thought, okay, I'm going to try this and just see what happens. And this is not a preacher story. I know preachers make up illustrations sometimes. It's the truth. I sat there and I put the spine of the Bible in my lap and set it up there. And I just let it fall. Let's let the pages fall. Just see where it goes. When I opened my eyes, and it opened my eyes up to Micah chapter 7, verse 1. And you know what that says? It says, woe is me, says the Lord. And I thought, well, this process is not going to work. We're going to have to find a new way to prepare for our lessons. But I did look at preparing something. Today is, as all of you obviously know, our last worship service of the old year, as we look at, Lord willing, turning into the new year tonight and into tomorrow. So it's an auspicious day. It's a day when a lot of us look back at counting our blessings in the old year, maybe learning some lessons from the old year, maybe setting some goals or plans for the new year or some of those resolutions. Or maybe if you're like the most of us, it's just a time to flop and watch football. So I don't know what your plans are, but it is it's always an important time. It's always a time of reflection. I went back through some of my notes when I was thinking about what to prepare for today, and I looked through some old notes and some old lessons, and I actually found a sermon that I gave 31 years ago. And you really feel old when you say you did something 31 years ago as an adult. And that I still haven't gotten over turning 50, and and I'm 55. And at some point I got to drop this, But 31 years ago, I was, of course, what's the math? 24 years old. I was 24, and I was a pulpit preacher. Hey, look, Carol's nodding her head. That's right. Carol and Dennis, you were there. 24 years old at Athens Church of Christ in Athens, Tennessee, and that's where I was serving as pulpit minister. Carol Ann's here today; she can attest to all these things. But Carol, I found the lesson I preached that day, and it was exactly 31 years ago. It was the last Sunday service of the old year. Okay, and it was based on Nehemiah chapter 6, verse 9. Oh God, strengthen my hands for all the things of the new year coming forward. And at the time, Carol can correct me if I'm wrong, but Athens Church of Christ, Linear's bigger, but not greatly so. We might have on average 50 members more on a Sunday morning or so than Athens had, maybe a little more than that. A good congregation, very good congregation, but it had all the typical things you might think of in a year-end sermon. I was talking about goals for the new year, increasing our budget. This is terrible, but I even thought as the little kids were coming forward, if they give $2 each on Sunday morning instead of $1, Scott, we might do something with the budget. But anyway, that part of my lesson was, how to increase the budget, how to reach. We were trying to one day break the 200 average Sunday morning attendance barrier, okay. We were looking at adding on a classroom building. We were increasing our benevolence. We supported Tennessee Children's Home, like some of you know from here. And I didn't realize this, but I'd forgotten totally. We were supporting a church and an orphanage in Ukraine. And, who would have thought 31 years ago, if you're standing there thinking there's going to be war in Ukraine today? I mean, it's bizarre how things change and turn like they do. We had a full-time counseling psychologist there, a fine member there of the church, and we were looking at providing counseling services through the church and increasing our education program and doing more with our evangelism and our mission work. We supported work in Scotland and Moscow, actually, Central America. On and on I could go. We were looking at hiring a youth intern. So, why did I bring all this up? Well, one, just reminiscing, I guess, number one. But things, from church to church, things aren't that different sometimes. You look at some of the very things we were trying to do and set goals for there, it's very similar to what we do at Line Area, maybe in a different way sometimes. But what I focused on as I was going through that was this idea of, oh, God, strengthen my hand. Oh, God, strengthen my hand. And I got to thinking about where will Line Area be 30 years from now? We may not be here, those of us sitting in this room, some of us may be, who knows, but what will it look like, for a church that's been here since the 1880s, right, give or take a few years. Basically the same location, been here a long, long time, doing a lot of good works, growing a lot lately, and all this is super, but if you had to go back and look at the record, look at the historical record, what will we have accomplished? What have we done? How have we grown? Those kind of things were going through my mind. Something else that went through my mind was, as you look into the new year, and not to be negative, this, I promise you, the sermon will take a positive turn here in a minute, but I think we're challenged now more than we've ever been. I think the church in general, I think our church, I think the church as it exists in the United States is challenged more than it's ever been. More ever, even than in my lifetime. As I look back, I think we need strength in the Lord's church more now than we ever have. As the year changes, we face a lot of challenges. And I sometimes question, is that just me? Is that just because I'm negative on it? Is that because I just hear too much bad stuff in the news? Rationally, if I think about it, are things really as bad as they are? But I keep coming back around to the notion that, I think it is. I mean, I think that the church, the challenges, the decline that we see in our families, in the world around us, I think it's bad. I think it's worse than anything I've seen in my lifetime. And again, not to dwell on the negative, just a few examples. I think you've got just a general continuing breakdown in morality, just generally speaking. People just don't care anymore. People don't hew to any kind of moral standard anymore. And if we as Christians try to say anything about it or do anything about it, we're afraid to do that because we'll be accused of judging people, or being out of step or being backward, or, you fill in the blank on that. There just continues to be a breakdown in the marital home. You could literally, and I know this sounds cliche, but you could cure so many ills in our society, in our nation today, if you just had good, godly parents and godly families who were built and living and going about business according to God's plan. It's tragic. I am a lawyer. I've got a partner that does a lot of family law. And you let a week go by over Christmas, and then you come back into the office, and the voicemails are just jam-packed with families that are in crisis. Things have happened. Bad things have happened. Bad things with the kids. Bad things with the custody relationship that was supposed to be in place. Bad things going on between ex-husbands and wives. And I'm not at all judging that. My point is sad. It's just really sad. And what do you do about it? What's the answer to all that? All the emphasis that you have in our society today on personal rights. It's my right to do this or my right to do that. I don't care what political party you're in. I don't care what your flavor is on those things that you see in the news. That's one consistent theme. And we forget that as Christians, we don't really have rights in a sense. We're slaves to Christ. We're slaves to the church. In a real sense, in that agape love sense, we're slaves to each other. The emphasis on self is not there. The emphasis on what I want or what I insist on is not there. It's not part of it. It's not part of it. It's not my truth. It's not what I think is right. It's God's truth. It's what God thinks is right. It's what God would have us to be doing. And we've lost that. Everything's become so subjective. And I think Christians have, in a lot of ways, turned into cowards because we're afraid to evangelize. We're afraid to disciple. We're afraid to talk about what Jesus does in our life. We're afraid to speak out for danger of being ostracized or ridiculed or considered out of step or labeled something. Again, fill in the blank. So, enough on the negative, but yes, I see challenges. And I don't think those challenges are going to get better. All of that's not going to magically change because the year flips over tonight at midnight into a new year. So what do we do? How do we handle that? I think the starting point for all of that, to turn all that around, is Jesus. And you say, well, that's kind of cliche too. You say, well, Jesus is the answer. Well, how does that work? I mean, what does that really mean? What does it mean Jesus is the answer? I know you've been studying through Hebrews. If you want to turn your Bibles to Hebrews, I'm going to give you some answers to that. Give you a few answers to that. Hebrews chapter 13, verse 8 to start with. Jesus never changes. Jesus is what? Jesus is the same yesterday and today and forever. Okay? He's always there. He's always with us. He doesn't change in His character. He doesn't change in His attitude. He doesn't change in His mercy. He doesn't change in His compassion. He doesn't change in His expectations for what He wants out of me and you. He doesn't change in His truth. He's not subjective. He doesn't change. And there's great strength in that. Great strength in that. So to start with, let's see, Hebrews chapter 4, if you're flipping around there, turn to Hebrews chapter 4, verse 13. We'll start there in just a second. Hebrews 4:13. So what's the focus here just for the next few minutes is how does Jesus help? How is He there for us? Number one, He's there for us as help in time of need. He's there as help in time of need. Hebrews chapter 4, verse 13. Neither is there any creature that is not manifest in His sight, but all things are opened unto the eyes of Him whom we have to do. Seeing then that we have a great high priest, and that's Christ, Jesus, that is passed into the heavens, Jesus the Son of God, let us hold fast our profession. For we have not a high priest which cannot be touched with the feeling of our infirmities, but was tempted in all points like as we are, yet without sin. Let us therefore come boldly unto the throne of grace, that we may obtain mercy and find grace to help in time of need. Jesus is there as help in time of need. And I know we've talked about this sometimes in the past. It makes no sense logically. It makes no sense rationally, but Jesus was divine. Yes, He sits at the right hand of God. He's our high priest. He's our advocate. He is not our adversary. He's our advocate. He is pleading our case before God. He is there for us, but He's also 100% human. And you say, how can that be? How can He be 100% divine and 100% human? I don't know, but He is. And because of that, we can draw close to God. We have an advocate before God, and we've got somebody there that understands us when we're discouraged, when we're down, when we don't know how we can handle the struggles in life, when we think we are tempted beyond measure, when we think we will never change our lives, when we think that we're not going to be able to change the pattern on how we live. You know, I've got a friend that's now deceased, and you say I remember this him always saying, he said, a man's going to do what a man's going to do, and what he was trying to say is you don't change. You know, whatever your old habits are, you just never get out of them. maybe generally that's true, but the Bible says there is a way out. And when you need strength to make those changes in the new year, or any time for that matter, Jesus says, I'm here. Because why? Because I'm touched, I have felt your infirmities. I was tempted how? I was tempted just like you're tempted. And that's almost impossible for us to understand. But he was. But yet he did not sin. He's there for us. He's a help in time of need. How is it that Jesus never changes? Number one, he's a help in time of need. Number two, as a demonstration of true love. As a demonstration of true love. John chapter 15, verse 13, he says, greater love hath no man than this, that a man lay down his life for who? For his friends. And you're my friend if you do whatsoever I command you. That same agape, selfless love again. That same kind of love again. Matthew 9:36. That love is demonstrated in his compassion. But when he saw the multitudes, he was moved with compassion on them because they fainted and were scattered abroad as a sheep having no shepherd. He's there. He loves. He cares. He has compassion for us. The same kind of love that we need to exercise more in the new year. We say, well, I love my wife, I love my kids. It's easy to love the person next to you, right? But that guy sitting in front of you on the pew, I don't know about him or her. That kind of love has no boundaries. That kind of love has no lines. There's no limits. It doesn't matter who you know or don't know. It doesn't matter how well you know somebody. But we're expected to exercise the same kind of love that Jesus demonstrated. Number three, how is it that he never changes? He never changes as a revelation of God. As a revelation of God and who he is. That came through a three-part process here, and still kind of staying in Hebrews. Hebrews chapter 1, verses 1 and 2. God, who at sundry times and in divers manners spake in times past unto the fathers by the prophets. Okay, and I know you've studied Hebrews on Wednesday night here recently, but the Hebrew writer says in the past, how did God reveal himself to us? Like everybody, he says even the heathen can go out in the woods and see a tree or rock formation or see the animals scampering around and say what? I know there's got to be a creator because there's life. That's called general revelation. How did the specific revelation get to us? It got to us, God says, in the early days, how? It came by the fathers and by the prophets. In these last days, though, how does that revelation get to us? He hath in these last days, Hebrews chapter 1, verse 2, spoken unto us by his Son, whom he hath appointed heir of all things, by whom also he made the worlds. It was revealed through the Son. The Son is the revelation of God. And then, and I don't have time to read all of these, John chapter 16, verse 13, then from the Son to the apostles, and the apostles to us. 2 Timothy chapter 1, verse 15, study that show thyself approved unto God, a workman that needeth not to be ashamed, rightly dividing the word of truth. You see the course of revelation, the course of God's specific word. This word, the written word, came to us through Christ. Then through the apostles to us that we have it today, in the canon that we read and that we study and that we apply to our lives. That came from Jesus. How does Jesus never change? How does he help us? Through his word, through the revelation of God. Turn now to Matthew chapter 15 for just a second. Matthew chapter 15, verses 8 and 9. How does it not change? As a challenge to a committed life. He challenges us to commit ourselves. And we should do that in the new year. Matthew 15, verses 8 and 9. He says, he's talking about the Pharisees here, but these people draw nigh unto me with their mouth, and honoreth me with their lips, but their heart is far from me. He's saying, they give lip service. They give lip service. But what about their life? What about their actions? What about how they treat each other and how they live and how they go about their business day to day? What about that? Verse 9, but in vain they do worship me, teaching for doctrines the commandments of men. 2 points on all of this. 2 points on all of this. God doesn't want lip service. He wants action. He wants feet and hands that work. It's one thing to say, I serve God, I love God, I honor Jesus. It's another thing to go out and to do what? To visit the sick and to feed the hungry and to clothe those who need clothes, especially in a cold time of year like this. To do good unto others, to be active. And to live a morally upright life. That's what he calls us to do. That's commitment. That's commitment. And to do so how? I think this is interesting, and this is a subject for another sermon another day. But he said, in vain they worship me, teaching for doctrines the commandments of men. Folks, as Christians, we're listening too much to the doctrines of mankind. We're listening too much to people that subvert and dilute God's Word instead of what the Word really says. We're listening to too much TV, too much social media, too much stuff online. We need to focus on what Jesus said, what Jesus teaches. Number 5, got to move. He is always there as a source of our salvation. He says, I'm the way, the truth, and the life. No man cometh to the Father but by me. Go back, or if you've not left Matthew, stay there a minute. Go to Matthew chapter 10, verses 32 and 33. Matthew chapter 10, verses 32 and 33. Whosoever, therefore, shall confess me before men, him will I also confess before my Father which is in heaven. We know that verse. A verse that we don't listen to and we've not heard in a long time is verse 33. But whosoever shall do what? Deny me before men. Him I also will do what? Deny before my Father which is in heaven. We don't like that verse. How do we deny Jesus? Not necessarily by going out and verbally denying Him. That's not really what He's talking about. It's how we live our lives. Is the way you think and the way you live and the way you treat others, is that an affirmation of Christianity or is that a denial of Christianity? Does the way you live your life lead somebody to draw closer to Jesus, or does it cause them to question who Jesus even is? Because He does say right there in verse 33, I will deny you before God. Our advocate is going to say, I don't know that guy. You talk about cancellation. There was a lot said a year ago or so, and then some now even, about cultural, being canceled in culture. Cancel, that's divine cancellation there. I will deny you before God. Jesus, number 6, is the Prince of Peace. He is always there as the Prince of Peace. Peace I leave with you. John chapter 14, verse 27. My peace I give unto you. Not as the world giveth, give I unto you. Let not your heart be troubled, neither let it be afraid. The last one I'm going to give you is, He's always there. He never changes. Number 7, as hope of life. As hope of life. In John chapter 11, verse 25, Jesus said unto her, I am the resurrection and the life. He that believeth in me, though he were dead, yet shall he live. Yet shall he live. Or, Matthew 28, verse 6, like the angel said at the empty tomb, He is not here, for He is what? He's risen. As He said, which is mean as it was prophesied, He is risen. Come see the place where the Lord lay. Come see the place where the Lord lay. Jesus is always there. I was trying to leave the office the other day, and you guys probably think I make these stories up, and I don't. True story. Leaving the office, it was about 5:30, so it was dark this time of year, This is earlier in December. And I got a habit of going in the morning when I go in the office, I take my keys and stuff out of my pockets because I just don't like rattling around. It's just a habit. I put it on a bookshelf. So 5:30, everybody's gone. I'm ready to go home. I run out the back door, lock the back door, head to the truck. Truck is locked, reach in my pocket, and guess what? No keys. Man, I'm all aggravated. I'm in a hurry. I got to go. I'm hungry. Grab up all my stuff, turn around, go back to the back door of the office, grab the door handle, guess what? Locked. Reach in my pocket like I'd forgotten I didn't have my keys again. No keys. Okay, now what do? Nobody's in the office. Front door's locked too. Remember, this is dark. Stack all my stuff by the back door. Start going from window to window to see if anybody's window's unlocked. Found an unlocked window. Joe Looney, my partner. Started jimmying up the window. Get the window up. I'm in business. I get one leg in the window, lean my head in and look, and there's a cop car right there. City officer. I don't know who it was because I couldn't see in the car. Rolled his window down. Now remember, I'm in my suit and I got one leg out the window and my tie. Sir, you need some help? No, I got it. You might think about locking those windows. Yeah, you're right. Thank you. Anyway, it was humorous. True story. That window's now locked in case any of you guys have any ideas. Don't know what I'm going to do. Forget my keys. My point in telling the story, I know it's silly, but it's a true story. That's your key right there. That's your key. That's your key to hope. That's your key to happiness. That's your key to compassion. That's your key to being able to sleep well at night. That's your key on how to treat others well. That's your key to how to take care of your family. That's the key to answering most of the questions that come up in your life. And it's sitting right there in your lap or on your nightstand. The answer's here. All we got to do is use it. We just need to read it. Because it doesn't do us any good, unless we have it with us, So the key to your new year, the key to my new year, it's Jesus. It's Jesus' word. That's where we need to dwell. That's where we need to live. And if you need to draw closer to Him, you need to ask for some strength, maybe some forgiveness for some things of the old year. You want to start new, need a new beginning, need to get closer to Christ. We ask you to come forward as we stand and sing.